Hello and welcome to Supporting Weight Loss for Optimal Health. My name is Kerri-Anne and I'm a naturopath and a psychic healer. And today I wanted to come in and chat about the difficulty that we can face losing weight as women, and also how easy it can be to gain weight as women. And we'll be looking at different things like perimenopause, stress, estrogen, and some of the underlying factors that can cause the weight loss, the difficulty in the weight loss, and the ease in the weight gain. So let's begin here with flipping the why. And I think this is important because in our society, weight loss is, being overweight is seen as you are fat and lazy, basically. And so we may go on different diets and count calories and drink shakes and try all of these things to lose weight without success. And the reason that we're wanting to lose the weight is so that we don't look fat and lazy, basically. So I want to flip that why on why we're doing it. And from my perspective, the weight loss for me is about supporting you in your optimal health. So perhaps you're suffering with high blood pressure or high cholesterol, or you're at risk of cardiovascular disease, or you're just feeling exhausted all the time. And so I want you to flip that why around what your intention and motivation is behind losing this weight. So I've popped this quote in that I was thinking about the other day, and this is kind of my philosophy behind weight loss. So weight loss isn't just about looking good in a bikini. It's about nurturing your body for lasting health and vitality. So when you're thinking about changing your diet and changing your lifestyle to help you to lose weight, I want you to think about this. So you're creating a foundation for energy, confidence, and well-being from within. You're feeling lighter, sleeping better, moving with ease, and investing in a healthier future. And you're on a journey to rediscovering strength, balance, and joy in every aspect of your life. So I think that's a really important thing, a really important way to think about weight loss, rather than I need to shed these kilos so I can fit into my favorite pair of jeans. Okay, so underlying causes. And as a naturopath, you will hear me talk a lot about underlying causes. And what that means is what is driving that condition or the disease or the symptoms. And so in this case, it's what is driving that weight gain and that difficulty in the weight loss. And, you know, shakes and all of these kind of things, they're like a band-aid fix. Gastric bypass surgery, they're kind of just this little band-aid fix to how to try and stop your body from putting on weight, but they're not addressing that underlying cause. So we need to think about what is going on in your life at this moment in time that is stopping you from losing weight, and what is going on that is helping that weight to go on. And I'm not just talking about, you know, maybe you're eating too much or you're not exercising enough. Of course, those are important factors. But what I'm thinking about is any other kinds of things going, imbalances in your body that are going on that are stopping you from losing weight. And the first thing we're going to look at is perimenopause, because as we know, perimenopause and menopause are that time in our life where we get that middle-aged spread. And that's that weight gain in that waist, hips, and thigh area. And it's what we call central adiposity. So adipose tissue are fat cells. So we have that central spare tire, basically. So perimenopause is defined as that period 2 to 12 years, depending on which book or research paper you're reading, before menopause. So it is that in that time that you can see from this diagram, that our estrogen, so the estradiol, is fluctuating. So you see that in the red. You see it quite balanced throughout our reproductive years. And then during perimenopause, our estrogen fluctuates before it drops when we hit menopause. And so menopause is 12 months to the day from your final period, from your final menstrual bleed. So that's when your estrogen will drop completely and just be like really low and fluctuating. What we also see in the blue is our progesterone. So you'll see that progesterone starts to decline before estrogen does. And there's a couple of spikes, but then it's just quite low. And so that fluctuating estrogen affects our sleep, our mood, our insulin sensitivity, skin conditions, bone health, and our metabolism. And the declining progesterone affects our HPA axis. So that HPA axis is our stress response. So the HPA axis is controlling the release of cortisol and our stress response. So we may see symptoms like anxiety, depression, and insomnia. So this is an underlying cause as to why you can't lose weight. And we'll look a bit further into estrogen and the nervous system as well. So estrogen. We find that estrogen determines where our fat is deposited. So firstly, women have different fat to men. Women store fat differently to men. And unfortunately, when we have this fluctuating estrogen, high estrogen tends towards fat deposition around that central area. Low estrogen also tends towards fat deposition around that central area. So when we have a beautiful balanced estrogen, it's delivering our fat cells to where they need to go rather than just storing them in that central area. Our estrogen also regulates our metabolism, so it's controlling how our glucose is used and stored. So we eat food, our carbohydrates and sugars are turned into glucose in our body, and then that glucose is used in cells for energy. And if we have excess glucose, then it will be stored as fat cells. And so when we have this fluctuating estrogen, our metabolism's also fluctuating, and our glucose may be getting stored more as fat cells rather than being used where it's needed. Estrogen also supports that HPA regulation and mood, as I said. So we may find that if we're having fluctuations in estrogen, that we can't control our mood as well. We can't change the stresses around us, but we may be unable to react or respond to stress in a calmer way. So you might find yourself, going off the handle like the stereotype, crazy menopausal woman. And that's not a normal reaction that you would have to a mild stressor, but you can have a think about what's driving that reaction and that trigger, and it could possibly be that fluctuating estrogen. And estrogen also regulates insulin sensitivity. So it is there to help the insulin be, sorry, let me start that again. So insulin is secreted after we eat a meal, and it helps to support that glucose to go into the cells via receptors. And so the estrogen helps to maintain those receptors to be open, to be able to accept that insulin. And that will make a bit more sense as we move on. Okay, so stress is a really big one, and this is probably one of the most important ones that I will talk about with my clients. Is you will struggle and you may not lose weight at all if your HPA axis is out of whack, you are stressed, and you have high cortisol. So high cortisol increases our appetite and our cravings. And it does this in a few different ways. Um, it also stores glucose as fat cells. So again, we see that glucose being stored as fat cells. So if you're, fluctuating estrogen and you're stressed at the same time, then you've got this double whammy of glucose being stored as fat cells. It increases our blood sugar levels. So, again, when we're having more glucose floating around in our blood with nowhere to go except to be stored as fat cells. It decreases testosterone, which leads to decreased muscle mass. And so you may find that you're becoming weaker and not as strong as you used to be. And again, cortisol affects moods and sleep. So cortisol, the important thing with uh, irregular high cortisol, high estrogen, low estrogen, like this imbalance in hormones doesn't just affect that one hormone, it affects everything in the whole body. So if we have high cortisol, on the opposite side, we will have low melatonin. But that high cortisol is also affecting other hormones and other neurotransmitters around your body, including in your brain, your reproductive system, your digestive system. And so when we have an imbalance in one area, our whole body, because it works so synergistically together, our whole body tries to compensate for that by making changes, and we have dysregulated systems everywhere. So it's important to remember that stress and that high cortisol is not only affecting your where you're storing your fat and your blood sugar levels, but it's also affecting your mood and your sleep. So if you're not sleeping properly and you're feeling really crappy and you're depressed and anxious, then you're probably more likely to reach for those higher carbohydrate foods, those comfort foods, increasing, the blood sugar levels and more glucose in your body. And so unconsciously, you're contributing to, higher glucose and higher fat cell storage. So we need to just remember that everything in our body is working together. Insulin resistance. Now, you may not have heard of this, or you may have heard of it because it's becoming a bit more aware. People are becoming a bit more aware of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is actually a pre-diabetic stage. So it's the stage before you will be diagnosed with diabetes. And if you went to the doctors, it's highly unlikely that they're going to tell you you're insulin resistant. But there are signs that you can look for. So in insulin resistance, the cells in your liver and muscle and fat cells don't respond to insulin as they should. So in this image, you'll see this beautiful woman eating her bowl of breakfast. That goes into her stomach. I'm not sure if the pointer works when I'm using it here. So that goes into her stomach where it's broken down, and then the glucose or the little sugar molecules are put into the blood, go into our bloodstream. So then that triggers your pancreas, so the little yellow thing over here on the side, to release insulin. And I've represented insulin here as a key. And so then insulin is also released into the bloodstream. So we've got glucose and insulin floating through our bloodstream after we've eaten. So what the insulin does is, if you look down in this image of the cell, so this pink circle down here is the cell, and you'll see these little yellow like forks coming off them, and these are the receptors. So insulin is like the key that turns the receptor, unlocks the receptor, opening the door down here for the glucose to go into the cell and be used for energy. And what happens in insulin resistance is our receptors, so if you look over here on the left with the X here, our receptors are not sensitive to insulin anymore. And so insulin cannot unlock that receptor to allow the to allow the glucose molecules into the cell. And so what we see from there is high insulin levels in our blood because it's got nowhere to go, and high glucose levels in our blood, so high blood sugar levels. And that is insulin resistance. And again, what's going to happen with those glucose molecules floating through the blood? If they can't get into the cell, they're going to be stored as fat cells. And insulin resistance is quite prevalent in perimenopausal women and menopausal women. And again, it's that central adiposity, so those fat cells around the waist. Skin tags is another symptom. So if you're getting skin tags, then you've probably got insulin resistance. Darkening skin under the armpits is also another sign. So this is what we see in, which I've just explained. So if you've got increased blood sugar levels as in insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, then you'll have that excess sugar stored as fat cells, and it's extra work for the pancreas because the pancreas is secreting extra insulin to deal with the extra sugar cells. And so then that pancreas is working overtime as well. And then over here on the right, we end up with excess insulin production, which is called hyperinsulinemia. And then this can increase our triglyceride levels, so our cholesterol levels. It can increase our blood pressure, and it can increase the risk of atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of the arteries. So you can see that insulin resistance can be an underlying cause not only for the weight gain, but also for that high cholesterol and high blood pressure that you may have. And so then you go to the doctor and they'll say, okay, let's put you on this medication. And we don't, often you may not need to go on that medication. You just may need to make find that underlying cause to start with, and then make some diet and lifestyle changes. And that's where naturopaths and nutritionists can be really helpful, because that's what we're trained in, is supporting you and your body to make these changes to bring your body back into balance so that you don't need these medications. And these medications are, as we saw in an earlier one, a band-aid fix. So if you're taking a statin because you've got high cholesterol, and that's one of the highest prescribed medications in Australia, and it is one of the worst medications in my opinion. It increases your blood sugar levels. It has worse side effects. It depletes different nutrients in your body. But let's not go down that path. So your doctor gives you statins for your cholesterol. So yes, it might bring down your cholesterol levels to within range, or it might bring them down lower. But if you go off those cholesterol drugs, what's going to happen? Your cholesterol is going to increase because you haven't looked at that underlying cause, that insulin resistance. And so we need to be going down deep and finding that underlying cause and discovering exactly what it is in your diet and lifestyle and environment and mindset that may need changing to help shift that, rather than giving you a band-aid medication. So if that doesn't make sense, please feel free to send me a message. And I just wanted to touch on metabolic syndrome. It is another really prevalent condition or disease in America and Australia. And it is defined, so you only need to have 3 of these to be defined as having metabolic syndrome. So it's high cholesterol, high blood glucose levels, high blood pressure, or central adiposity, so that belly fat, that spare tire. So if you have 3 of those, you have metabolic syndrome. And that increases your risk of cardiovascular disease. And so this is when I talk about losing weight for optimal health. So we're looking at making those dietary changes to help reduce the cholesterol, blood glucose levels, that central adiposity, and that blood pressure by looking at those underlying causes. So, the estrogen, the stress, or the insulin resistance, for example. But it's not all bad news. That's just giving you a little bit of an idea about what could be going on in your body. And now we're just going to have a look at what changes you could make to support yourself to heal your own body, because our own bodies are amazing and they're always trying to bring us back into balance. And so, if we can support our body in the way it needs, then it's going to heal itself without any medication. And the first thing we need to do is look at our nervous system and supporting our stress response so that we're lowering that cortisol. And there's a lot of things that you can do to support your stress response. Like, you can't stop the stresses in your life. You may be able to make changes to get rid of a lot of your stress, things that are stressing you. But if you can't, if your work is stressful or something, then it's about how your nervous system is reacting to that. So identifying those triggers that are triggering you into that high cortisol state. And that high cortisol state is you'll feel that stress, that tension, that jaw clenching, that not breathing properly, that heart racing, unable to sleep. So if you can identify those triggers that are triggering that stress response, and then think of ways to react in a different way. So you may feel that you're quite stressed, you've been rushing all morning, you haven't sat down, and you stop and take a minute to check in with your body, and you're like, wow, okay, I am way too stressed, everything's tight. So just consciously taking that time to sit, and it doesn't need to be for long. This is the thing. It may be taking a few deep breaths when you've stopped at the traffic lights. I often say to my clients, when you go to the toilet, um, just rather than just rush and then get back into your day, just take that time to just sit, take in a few deep breaths, consciously relax the muscles in your body. And that's all our nervous system needs to switch out of that high cortisol response and back into our slower nervous system. And so then you come out of the toilet and you're better able to respond to any stresses. So if you imagine a scene where I don't know, you're trying to get dinner ready and the kids are yelling and the TV's blaring and then the dog starts barking and all of a sudden you're overstimulated and your brain's about to explode. Turn the dinner off, go to the toilet, close the door, take a few deep breaths. It doesn't have to be the toilet. Go to a cupboard, go to somewhere you can get some peace and quiet, take a few deep breaths, feel yourself consciously slow down, and then step back into the chaos, and you will respond in a much better way rather than, screaming banshee woman. Essential oils are beautiful, flower essences, herbs, crystals. There's a whole lot of tools and techniques that you can use to help bring your nervous system back down into that slower state. Reducing that overstimulation. So, turning the TV off if it's too much, finding something for the kids to do, not being on your blue screen as much because that's stimulating cortisol, reducing coffee and alcohol, caffeine and alcohol, so even tea, really increase that cortisol, as does sugar. So being consciously aware of what you're putting into your body that is increasing cortisol as well. And there are some beautiful herbal teas that will help slow that down, such as chamomile, lavender, beautiful teas and herbs that you can drink to help slow that down. Passion flower is another beautiful one. And finally, getting enough sleep. And so that's going to be difficult if your cortisol is high. And so this is where this reducing this overstimulation before bed, setting a beautiful bedtime routine, reading or listening to some beautiful, slow, gentle music before going to bed instead of scrolling, having a relaxing bath, again, using essential oils, using all of these tools to create a beautiful sleeping environment, but also with the intention of lowering that cortisol and increasing that melatonin so that you can have a good night's sleep. Okay, moving on, metabolic health. So keeping your balance in your blood sugar levels so that we're not spiking that glucose and insulin to be stored as fat. And to be able to do that, we need to make sure that we're having breakfast, particularly before caffeine. We don't want to be having caffeine before we eat because that is going to spike that cortisol so high that we're going to start our day off with high cortisol and we're not setting ourselves up for a beautiful day. So, nice breakfast, and sometimes you may not feel like breakfast, and that's a whole other story. But we can, if you're concerned about that, you can contact me and we can organize a consultation to chat about why you might not be wanting to eat breakfast or not feeling hungry. But let's go back to assuming that you are having a breakfast. So you're wanting to have a really nice, beautiful breakfast that's high in protein. So eating protein regularly throughout the day is going to help to keep those blood sugar levels balanced. So you're not going to be having spiking blood glucose, spiking insulin, storing fat throughout the day, and then crashing in the 3-4 o'clock phase. So a beautiful protein balance throughout the day. Moving your body every day, excuse my typo there. And this doesn't mean, going to the gym and doing a 1 hour high intensity interval training or running 5Ks. Moving your body every day is about helping shift that glucose into the cells to start with so that it's not being stored as fat, but also about increasing the energy in your cells, and improving your mind, helping balance everything out in your body. What we need to be careful of is if you already have high cortisol, you do not want to be doing high intensity training. You don't want to be, running 5Ks or pushing yourself, because then you're increasing your cortisol, you're draining your adrenals, and you're going to crash and burn. And you're going to have high cortisol and you're going to be like, I'm doing all this exercise, but I'm still not losing weight. And that's because your cortisol's still high. So you're still storing fat cells. So you need to be conscious about what your body is needing from you. And doing some exercise after a meal is a really good way to keep those blood sugar levels balanced as well. So perhaps in the evening is when you find yourself getting hungry or cravey. So maybe you're going for a gentle walk or putting on some music and, doing some gentle dance or something nice and gentle to help shift the glucose into the cells, move your body, increase those endorphins, increasing that mood, rather than increasing cortisol. And then reflect on your diet. So we want to be conscious of what we are eating. So are you eating too many processed foods? Are you eating too much sugar? Are you eating too many carbohydrates? So, breads, pastas, rices. I'm not talking about carbohydrates in fruit and vegetables. I'm just talking, or sugars in fruit and vegetables. We still want to be eating those for the nutritional benefits and their fiber. I'm talking about the processed carbohydrates in, those things: breads, pastas, flours, and rices. Are you getting enough iron in your diet to support your body functions? So, really thinking about your diet and where you can make changes. And this is where it's really good to have someone to support you, because I don't believe in changing your diet instantly overnight. I would prefer that we together we can look at your diet, or you can look at your diet and you can say, okay, so um, I'm having a Coke and a biscuit for morning tea. So perhaps I can change that to a smoothie and some carrot sticks or something. And you make that change, and you keep that change in for a week, and then you look at somewhere else you can make a change. And it's making those small changes each week that are going to be achievable and sustainable, rather than saying, okay, I'm changing my whole diet, I'm going to eat salads every day, and I'm going to do this and this, this, and this. And it's something that you will fail in, and then you will go back to eating the way you were. So reflecting on your diet. Perimenopause, and this is where so many women struggle, and often there are diet and lifestyle and environment changes we can make to make this transition easier and more gentle. So we're aiming for a gentle transition, remembering that this perimenopause pausal time, transitioning into menopause, is natural for our body. And it's like our second puberty. So our hormones, yes, our hormones are changing and making things more difficult. But if we're really stressed and we're eating crappy foods and we're not feeding our body and fueling our body properly, then we're going to make this transition much more difficult. High stress and high cortisol is definitely going to impact your transition from through perimenopause into menopause. And I really want you to have a think about that as well. Accepting the natural changes. So, there's a stigma around perimenopause and menopause being difficult. It's a difficult time. Women are cranky, they get fat, don't go near a menopausal woman. And so anything that happens in our life around this time is blamed on perimenopause or menopause. And often that's not the case. So accepting that these changes are natural is going to be easier and make that transition more gentle for you. As I said, eating nutritional foods. So really focusing on foods that are supporting the body during perimenopause. And I do have a recipe book with perimenopausal foods and recipes that are really good to support you at this time. And getting enough sleep, again, it's just that same story that, if we're not getting enough sleep, our body's not having a chance to recover. We're waking up tired and grumpy. We're probably reaching for coffee and high carbs and crappy foods. We're stressed, and we're not going to have a beautiful, balanced, gentle transition. And then I just wanted to have a quick talk about the Ozempic and Mounjaro, because I know they're quite popular, and I know that people do lose weight on them, but I just want you to be aware, and I'm not saying don't take them. I mean, this is your health journey and it's your choice, but I want people just to be aware of their options and their choices. So Ozempic and Mounjaro work by inducing fullness and which is known as satiety, by slowing down the emptying of your stomach. So they're stopping the natural peristalsis, or the waves of the stomach, that help shift that food down into your digestive tract to help you feel fuller for longer. They also increase the insulin release from the pancreas. So we've been talking about that insulin release and insulin resistance, and hyperinsulinemia. So if you are taking Ozempic or Mounjaro and you do have insulin resistance already, so your insulin is high, and then this medication is coming in and increasing that insulin release again. So I don't know what the answer is to that, but how high is your insulin going to go if it's already high? And then they make these changes in your body. So yes, you might eat less and have less cravings, and your insulin is being released from your pancreas, and maybe it is helping the glucose be more absorbed into your cells. But then what happens when you stop taking them? So you haven't made any other changes, and the medication has made these mild changes for you. You stop, it's a band-aid fix. You stop taking them, you rip the band-aid off, you stop taking them, and you haven't addressed any of those underlying causes, and then all of a sudden the weight comes back on. And then just over on the right, I have thrown in a list of side effects that I have found just on the internet, just to Google, um, that you may get from taking them. You may not. You may get them. It just, I suppose, it just depends on how sensitive your system is. But my thought is, where is the balance, and where are the pros and cons in, yes, it takes more effort to change your diet and your lifestyle, and yes, it's easier to just pop a pill, and everyone just wants that magic pill, but which is better for health, your long-term health and wellness? So I just wanted to pop that one in there for you. And thank you. So, thank you for listening. I hope that has been educational for you, and I hope you have got something out of that. Um, and as a thank you for listening today, I want to offer you. So, I'm doing a free 4-week weight loss challenge for 3 women, and this is about setting up those foundations for optimal health for the future. It's not about 4 weeks, work hard, lose weight, and then just go back to what you were doing. It's about setting up those foundations for you. And so that is for 3 women. So it's going to be, I'm going to allow you to express your interests, and then I will have a chat with everyone, and then pick the 3 women that I think that this is going to support the best, uh, or that maybe need it the most. So please do express your interest if you are wanting to join that free 4-week weight loss challenge, and that will be starting in a week. So we're at November the 16th, 2024. And so we will be starting that not this Monday, next Monday. Sorry, I don't have my calendar in front of me. So about the 25th of November, I think that will take it to. So just in time for Christmas, just getting that energy and back in balance for Christmas. I'd also like to offer you a discount for the Thrive program, which is starting in January 2025. So if you're interested in that, you can send me a message, or you can head over to my website and subscribe to that. Just subscribe to the newsletter and you will get information about that. And also, for the rest of the year, if you do book a naturopathic consult, so if you are wanting some support with finding those underlying drivers and support with continuing through, and there are some beautiful herbs and supplements that can also help to balance those blood sugars and reduce that insulin resistance, and reduce those risks of metabolic disease. So we're working holistically from all different aspects, and as well as adding in some diet and lifestyle changes as well. But if you're interested, you will, and you do book a consult before the end of this year, December 2025, then you will also get a free meal planner. And so that's a weekly meal planner that comes with all the recipes and the shopping list, to give you some ideas and to help support you as well on a deeper level. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. That's my website down there. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel as well. And I hope that you've really gained an insight into weight loss for optimal health. Thanks for listening.